They came for the bike the night the streetlights were down, and the chrome caught what little light there was like it was trying to wink back at them, like it knew it belonged to somebody. My name's Mason Cole, and that bike hides the last thing my grandfather left me, greasy with his fingerprints and stubborn as a proverb. So when someone decided they had the right to take it, something in me woke up slow and sure and stayed awake. Maple Ridge looked like a postcard trim hedges, matching mailboxes, mums in every yard, and the people who ran it treated rules like scripture. Linda Hargrove was the president of that scripture, neat hair, sharper tongue, and she treated fines like a hobby that paid. At first it was petty, a notice about a crooked mailbox, a fine for a faded fence slap pinpricks meant to remind you she could, and you couldn't. Then came the driveway confrontation. You can't leave that in the front, she announced one hot afternoon, tapping a clause like a gavel. It's against community aesthetics. It's a bike, I said, hand on the tank, because there's a quiet that comes when you remember who taught you to stand up. It's titled, Register Reddit's My Grandfather's. She smiled with the precision of someone used to being obeyed. Even so, Mason, we have standards. Her son Derek filmed the whole thing, grin wide as if he was making content, and then she suggested a donation to the fund, a solution that smelled like a transaction and a threat. The line between being neighborly and taking what you want blurred right there. 2 weeks later, a flatbed came in the dark. No smashed lock, no drama, just a white van, a man with a flashlight, and the slow lift of my grandfather's Triumph like a crate. My garage cam caught them. I replayed it until the pixels became proof. The AirTag I'd hidden under the seat pinged from a scrapyard, then blinked out. Rudy, the tow driver, later sat in my kitchen and apologized with his hat in his hands. They said it was authorized, he said. They handed me a text, and I thought community request. That assumption, this willingness to believe authority without asking questions became the pivot. I could have gotten loud, smashed a mailbox, written angry letters, but Grandpa's voice cut through. Don't get loud, get organized. And so I did the boring work. I printed every HOA notice, every photo, every receipt. I copied the title until the paper corners sanded my fingers. I talked to neighbors. Most shrugged. Inez Morales, 2 doors down, handed me porch cam footage without a fuss. Frank lent me a trailer. Rudy handed me the text thread he'd been given, and the little, ordinary kindnesses started to add up. I set a trap with paperwork and a phone call. I called Linda, calm and small, pretending to negotiate. She obliged, her voice smooth, practiced. We can make this go away, Mason, she said, like an angel offering a deal. A donation to the fund, and we'll forget the fines. The removal won't be a problem. She said it plain, as if her words were policy, not extortion. I hit record. When I took the folder to the county, Diane Keller, the prosecutor, didn't scoff. She opened the files the way a mechanic opens a hood, methodically, with an appetite for the truth. The detective they sent subpoenaed the HOA's books, and under the ledger lines the same names and removal entries appeared. A little business run through civic language. Text threads matched bank transfers. Late-night calls had timestamps. The more we peeled back, the more it smelled like a scheme that used bylaws as a cloak. We staged the reveal at the HOA meeting because that's where Linda felt safest among the people she'd curated and the applause she'd learned to count on. I remember standing up when she tried to pivot me. Voice didn't shake, which surprised me. You think you get to decide what I keep? I asked, and it came out clearer than I felt. The room went quiet, the kind of hush that makes you hear your own breath. Linda's eyes pinched. We keep standards, she said, using the word like a shield. You keep law. I said back, square and slow. Derek's phone slipped from his hand and hit the floor. Someone in the back made a nervous laugh, and for a moment the ritual of civility cracked, and everyone could see the ledger behind the curtain. She tried to pivot, of course. It was a misunderstanding, she said, practiced and small. Derek muttered something about property values, which sounded like an excuse in a room full of receipts. Inez's footage stitched the van to the toe to the ledger entry. Rudy's texts matched the line items, and Diane had subpoenas lined up like a slow knife. The room that had hummed at her commands leaned forward in a way that made her rigid. When neighbors saw the actual transfers, a few neat sums that, added up, became habit, they realized the fines were not about community care so much as a revenue stream. Linda didn't go quietly. The last act of power is to fight like survival. She called names, sent notes, Argued process. She used every procedural shield she could find. But audio, receipts, and timestamps are hard to argue with. Suspension followed fast. The county filed charges that weren't a punchline: extortion, conspiracy, misuse of position. It wasn't a cinematic arrest on the front lawn, but it was real, and it closed a circle in a way the neighborhood could measure. The fallout wasn't neat. People took sides. Friends I'd waved to at trash day called me a troublemaker. Others stopped inviting Linda's supporters to their barbecues. There were whispered versions of the story that focused on different villains: for making a public scene, Linda for what she'd done, the county for telling everyone's secrets. That bitterness is an ugly, human thing. Community is a web, and when a thread frays, the whole net trembles. They returned the bike after the case set led no triumphal horn, just a man with a clipboard and a release form. The Triumph was battered but whole. The dent on the tank felt like a thumbprint of history when I ran my hand along it. I didn't roar down the street like a victor. I rolled. Because some winds are quieter, you keep the wheels moving and let the road steady you. What surprised me most wasn't the charges or the filing. It was the ordinary goodness that showed up. Rudy told the truth even though it cost him a job. Inez handed over footage without drama. Diane pushed the paper until the ledger could no longer hide. Those are the moments that make you believe institutions can work, when people decide not to look away. They also show what's scary: how easily rules can be weaponized by someone who starts to like the sound of power. I tried to imagine what made Linda do it. Maybe it was insecurity braided with small triumphs, someone who found authority and mistook it for immunity, who began to believe the rules only applied to other people. I don't know her life story, and I'm not there to excuse her, but understanding the texture of motive is important if you want to stop the next one from slipping into the same habit. Maple Ridge didn't heal overnight. We rewrote bylaws, set up clearer reporting, and put a few new faces on committees so a single person couldn't run the show. But you can't paper over memory. Some neighbors still pass each other with the caution of folks who know what papers revealed. There are small acts of rebuilding: a borrowed cup of sugar, a new kind of committee meeting with open minutes, but there's also the long work of trust. Now I ride because the road keeps me honest. The bike is a link to my grandfather and to the idea that some things are worth protecting without making a spectacle. The practical lesson is simple. Keep your records, capture the proof, and when faced with someone in a small seat of power, don't let the procedure intimidate you into silence. The deeper lesson is about people: hold on to neighbors who will stand with you, because institutions are only as good as the people who use them. So tell me, what would you do if someone in a position of small power came after something you loved? Would you get loud, or get organized, or do both? Are rules there to keep the peace or to centralize control? Drop your thoughts below. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And if these neighborhood reckonings interest you, subscribe. There are more stories hiding behind lawns and bylaws, and I want to hear what you think before the next one comes knocking.